Hi, everybody. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. So nice to have you here. And hey, if you're watching the replay, hello to you as well. Hope you're having a good day. My name is Natalia Hansen from Humane Canada's Summit for Animals, the largest animal welfare conference in our country, which we are hosting in Montreal in a month. Actually, now that I say this out loud, I realize that a month from today, April 28th, will be the first official day of the conference. I say official because we have a pre conference learning labs on April 27th, which is sponsored by Edmonton Humane Society. But the first official day of the conference is April 28th, exactly a month from today. We'll be in Montreal with close to 500 people coming from all corners of Canada, from the United States, even from as far as Australia. So we are very excited. And guess what? Our conference is sold out. So unfortunately, there is no more room to register. We have a wait list and we're working through it, but registration is closed for now. So keep an eye out for the 2026 conference. We are going to announce the location at the end of April. So if you didn't get a chance to register for this year's, there is always 2026. All right, I have two very special guests today joining us on this live stream. They are my coworkers at Humane Canada, Sue and Claire. I am going to tell you a little bit about them before they come out on the screen. And we are going to talk about the violence link today. We're going to talk about the Promise and Practices Project by Humane Canada. We are going to talk about humane education. So, if you are watching live, I encourage you to interact in the chat with them, ask questions, post your comments, anything that you want to know about Humane Canada's Promise and Practices project, please do tell us, because the goal of these live streams, the goal of doing this live is to interact with you, the viewers, and give you a sneak peek into the sessions and the speakers that you will find at the Summit for Animals. All right, without further ado, let me tell you about Sue and Claire. Let's start with Claire. Claire Dulude is the research coordinator for Humane Canada's Promise and Practices Project. She has a background in animal welfare and is passionate about equitable access to care and preserving the human animal bond. She holds a master's degree in animal behavior and welfare from the University of Guelph and has previously coordinated Humane Canada's ACT project and National Pet Food Bank. Claire currently resides on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Mississauga and Haudenosaunee peoples, where she shares her home with her beloved dog, Dozer. Joining her, we have Sue O'Neill, manager of the Promise and Practices Project at Humane Canada. Sue brings over 5 years of experience in gender based violence services alongside work in mental health, employment services, and education. She's a Master of Women and Gender Studies candidate at St. Mary's University and a recipient of Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council grant. With a Master of Education from Western University, Sue is deeply committed to intersectional advocacy and support services. So let's bring them out onto the screen and say hello. Hello, friends.
Hi, how
Hi.
are you?
I'm doing well. How are you both?
Good.
Great.
So excited
We're
to
so
be here.
excited. I know we're so
I
excited to be here.
know. I know this is the first of this live stream series with my own colleagues at Humane Canada. So it's exciting because
Yay.
obviously there's more of an interpersonal connection there between us. So very happy to have you in this aspect as my guests in this live stream. So I really want to give the floor to you, ladies. This is all for you. I want to spotlight the work that you're doing at Humane Canada and talk a little bit about your session, which, by the way, you're also presenting with Garrett from our team as well. So there's going to be
Yeah.
three people speaking at the Summit for Animals in Montreal. So why don't we
Mhm.
start from the very beginning for anybody who may be watching this and has never heard of the violence link? Can you tell us what this is and how can we recognize this?
Yeah, for sure. I can take that one. So, the violence link is the relationship between violence towards people and violence towards animals. I know this is going to be a very kind of inherent topic and a very common one among a lot of our partners. But sometimes it's really hard to kind of distinguish. And so, specifically in the context of this project, we know that a lot of people who experience interpersonal violence or intimate partner violence have animals in the home, and those animals are going to be exposed to or maybe even experiencing violence themselves. So in Canada, for example, we know that more than half of households have a dog or cat, so they're multi-species homes. And so we know in a lot of those homes, there could be violence happening. And so those animals are at risk of also experiencing violence along with their human counterparts. And there's actually a recent study that showed that shelters in Canada produced a stat that 89% of survivors of gender-based violence reported that their animals also experienced threatened or enacted violence by their aggressor. And so, unfortunately, sometimes an aggressor will use that human-animal bond to either intimidate or control or coerce their partner. So yeah, in the context of this project, we definitely want to work towards reducing gender-based violence, and so reducing violence towards both people and animals at the same time. And yeah, it's really important to kind of recognize that whole family, and in the case of gender-based violence, make sure that we're seeing how significant and impactful that link can be.
It's clear. Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to add there, Sue, to what Claire just said?
That was such a perfect answer, Claire. I really don't even have anything to add. That was awesome.
You said it so well and eloquently. Yeah, I love that you said recognizing the family as a whole. So that includes animals because that's how Canadians see animals. We see them as family members. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, no, that's perfect. So now I want to jump into the most important part of this live stream, in my opinion, because this is something that you have been working on for a little while now. Again, with Garrett, we need to recognize Garrett, even if he's not joining us here on the screen right now. But shout out to you, Garrett. And it's about the Promising Practices program, which is a program of Humane Canada. We briefly touched on this last week about, I think I want to say about 10 days ago. I had a live chat with Alison Coughley from the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. And
Mm-hmm.
they talked about this. They gave us a sneak peek about the Promising Practices
Yeah.
program, and they shouted out to you both. But I now want to hear it from you too, the people on the inside, the people who have been working on this from the ground up.
Do you want me to jump in on that one, Claire? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
So what the project is how do we build an educational framework that combines the best of humane education and the best of gender-based violence education to engage boys and men as allies towards ending violence. And so it's really looking at how do we kind of further the reach of humane education, because we know humane education inherently is violence prevention, through engaging an audience that may not necessarily be as involved.
Anything to add there, Claire?
Yeah, I don't think so at the moment. I think, yeah, I'm excited to kind of tell you a little bit about how we hope to do that. And yeah, I'm so excited that you spoke to Allison a little bit about the project.
Yes.
We love Allison, and Allison will be on our Learning Labs Day. So I'm very
Yes,
thrilled
And
about that.
exactly.
Allison is
Yeah,
also
and I
on our, oh, sorry, Allison's also on our steering committee. I should add that.
Yeah.
yes. Yes. Yeah, that leads me into what I'm about to say. But first, I wanted to highlight a comment here coming from LinkedIn from Jennifer, who's also part of the Humane Canada team. And Jennifer says, I think we are learning more and more that animals and people don't exist in isolation. And I think that's true. If we look 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the perception that we had of companion animals is not the same as what it is now. I am curious to know as what it will be like in 10 years, in 20 years, if you know what I mean. It's interesting to see how the
Absolutely.
human animal bond is evolving, even the
Mhm.
role of humane societies and SPCAs. I remember my very first Humane Canada conference in 2016 in Toronto. I was very new to the animal welfare world and everything was new for me, right? And so there was one
Mhm.
session where they talked about the future of humane societies and SPCAs and how they saw that as turning into more like community centers or community hubs. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, what? Like, it just seemed like such a foreign concept to me. And this was in 2016, so almost 10 years ago. And if we look now, almost 10 years later, that's kind of what they're shifting to be, right? Um,
Totally.
Mhm.
for example, the pet food banks. And Claire, I know you've been involved with Humane Canada's pet food bank program. So you would
Mhm.
know Human Animal Support Services. Again, I had a chat with Dylan Dotson from Toronto Humane Society. She's the director of
Yes.
social services,
Mhm.
talking about how what is the role of social services and humane societies, shelters, SPCAs. So it's really interesting to see how everything has evolved. What do you think about that? What do you both think of this shift that we've seen within the past 10 years, let's say?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. I know we're both like we both
we're
love this
ready.
topic. Sorry. Sue, do you want to go first?
I was just, I'll just point out that Dylan is also on our steering committee and also implementing a focus group pilot program using the promising practices framework. So I just wanted to share that, but Claire, you can go first.
Yeah, I think yeah, we're so lucky to have Dylan on board. Oh my gosh, what a
We're
rock star.
lucky.
Yeah, I think exactly like you're saying, Natalia. I think it's really, really cool. And I saw this really progress with the National Pet Food Bank. Is that we're seeing so many humane societies and SPCAs and animal welfare organizations in general kind of self identify as support, as like social service organizations, which
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes they don't necessarily kind of see it that way, but you're supporting the person as much as you're supporting the animal. And I think it was a Red Rover that coined supporting both ends of the leash. And now I could be
Um,
wrong on that, but I just adore that thought. So I think, yeah, absolutely, we're seeing that interconnectedness, and adding on top of that, of course, interconnectedness with the environment too, and that one welfare perspective being so crucial. So yeah, I don't know, Sue, if you want to add anything.
Well, I was just going to add that, humane societies and SPCAs have always done life-saving work when it comes to animals. And now that, folks are adding, emergency gender-based violence fostering programs and all this stuff, they're now also doing life-saving work with humans because we know that survivors won't leave or they'll delay leaving and they'll remain in violent situations. And we're currently experiencing an epidemic of femicide. So it's just really incredible to see these organizations that are focused on animal welfare just building these beautiful programs that support the welfare of all.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I love what you just said, Claire, about supporting both ends of the leash. I was looking up our schedule, and there is a session from Matt Pepper at the Summit for Animals. He's the president and
Mm,
CEO of Michigan Humane, and his session is called Both Ends of the Leash, Keeping Families Together. So
Oh,
it's
there you
love
go.
really,
that.
yeah,
I'll be
exactly. It's
there.
really yeah, exactly. And by the way, even though we are sold out, I still encourage everyone who's watching, whether live or the replay, to browse our schedule. Sue and Claire, you are both part of our program committee. So you've been also involved in the conference on the inside by helping us review the session abstracts, put together the program. So most people who come to a summit for animals, and we know this, we are not making this up. We know this because that's what people respond to on the survey. They come for the education. So thank
Yeah.
you. I want to thank you publicly because I know it's no easy task to browse through this year. We hit a milestone because I remember our goal was to get 100 abstracts, 100 submissions for
Right.
presentations, and we got 217, something like that. It was a
Yeah.
lot. So you've
Yeah.
done fantastic work, you and all of the other program committee members. So thank you as well. So yeah, go to humancanada.ca/summit and browse through our schedule, take a look at our speaker lineup, read more on them. When I introduced Sue and Claire right before we went or before we started the conversation, that was a summary of their bios. There's a lot more about them. So I just couldn't say it all because, for the sake of time. There is a comment here. I want to say this is from Kathy Duncan. I just can't see her name. We used to use support both ends of the leash when we were talking about human animal support services. Yeah, that's
Oh,
totally
okay.
coming from
That is
Kathy.
where I heard
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Love
Yeah,
that.
that's totally coming from Kathy. I just know that. Okay, that is fantastic. So let's
Well, I
carry on
just
with
want
this
to
conversation. Sorry, go
I
on.
I was just going to jump in and say thank you to our internal events team because they made being on the program planning committee easy, which
Mhm.
is not easy to do when there's so many abstracts to go through. So, really,
Yeah.
Natalia, you and your team have been incredible.
Yeah.
Oh,
And really,
thank you
and
so
I'm speaking on behalf of both of us, but I feel like we were just a drop in the bucket. Like it was such a huge
Totally.
effort on the part of everyone, and I feel like we played such a small role in a way in contributing to the
Totally.
Learning Labs day. So really, like the team did such a fabulous job. We were just so happy that
thank
we got to
you.
be part of it.
Yes.
Thank you. No, thank you. And I just want to also, this is the rest of this conversation is just going to be us taking each other back and forth, ping ponging. Because now I'm like, okay, well, now I thank you back because your program, Promise and Practice, is the sponsor of the Summit for Animals. And obviously, we really couldn't put together a conference without the support of our sponsors. This year's presenting sponsor is PetSmart Charities of Canada, who has presented the conference for 12 consecutive years. So basically, since the conference started. So huge shout out to them.
Yeah.
And then all of our other partners, including your project. So thank you so much for that to both of you ladies. Back to our regular programming. This is gonna be all. No, but thank you. No, but thank you. Oh, look, we have a beautiful comment from Catherine Lacefield. She's been a speaker in the past. She's coming to a conference as an exhibitor this year, and she said your team is amazing. So thank you, Catherine. And oh, thank you so much. You know what? Let's not talk about it. Let's just back in basking the love that we're getting from the chat. I love this. Kidding. But by the way,
Amazing.
thank you for interacting. We really appreciate the comments in the chat, the
Mm,
questions, everything. This is the goal of doing this live and not
Mhm.
pre-recorded, that we can interact with you all. Okay, fantastic. So let's bring this back to the Promise and Practices framework. Sue, you just gave us a quick sneak peek at what it is. You
yeah.
talked about humane education, which we are going to talk about again, but tell us some successful examples or cases where organizations or individuals have been able to implement this framework successfully.
So this is where I will say, come check us out on the Learning Labs Day, because this is where we'll be able to really showcase the success and all that's happening. But I'll give a little sneak peek. So right now we have 13 programs actually implementing, and so they're currently in progress, and so they're currently being evaluated. So I can't I can't really tell you about that evaluation because we don't have it quite yet, but I'd love to tell you
Mm.
about how they've been applying the framework, because we tried to make this framework as adaptable as possible, and it really is. So most folks were thinking, there's this humane educational framework, so it's for like humane education programs or like humane education in schools, and it absolutely is. But we also have folks using this framework to build like info sessions about fear-free training and utilizing this framework as a way to help folks understand animal behavior, but also understand, the role of allyship with humans. Um, as well as we have folks that are utilizing this to have like conversations in community with men and sort of like little workshops in community. We have some folks that are utilizing this actually in like a youth shelter to have an educational piece. So it's really, we designed this framework for the purpose of, you can take this framework and really apply it anywhere successfully, really implement it anywhere successfully. And we're so excited because once our evaluation is wrapped up, we're going to have an evaluation report available to everyone on our online learning center. But also we will, have case studies showcasing the success of the programs and talking about what folks actually did, which is super interesting because every single one of our 13 focus group partners are implementing it really differently.
Wow. Okay. This sounds like you've done a lot of work. I know it's not officially launched yet, but we want to give people a sneak peek, and I'm
Mm.
sharing the link right here on the screen. This is part of the Learning and Resource Center by Humane Canada. So I'm putting the link here. I put it in the chat as well. So hopefully that shows up on LinkedIn too. Please check it out. There are some courses that people can pre-register for right now, correct?
Yes, there are. And if you pre-register, you'll be able to get our stuff when we first launch it and not be waiting.
Exactly. So be the first. Exactly. Be the first. I want to highlight again a comment from our lovely coworker, Jennifer, who says, I'm always so impressed at how far and wide this concept is going and how organizations are really able to embrace it and use it in a way that makes sense to their work while staying true to the goals of the project. I love that. Yeah. It's been able
I
to
love
like
that.
almost like duplicate it for each scenario or
Mhm.
each audience, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's really meant to be
That's
flexible and adaptable, which is what we were hoping for,
Hmm.
because that's how you are able to get that further reach.
thank you. Yeah. I had a chat with Dr. Shane Bateman couple of days ago, and he was
Yes,
talking about a pioneering equine welfare assessment training program. I think is what it's called
yes,
by Equine Guelph at the University of Guelph in Ontario, and their goal is to replicate this program across Canada. But he said something along the lines of horses don't mean the same in our country, right? Like a
yeah,
horse in Alberta won't be the same as a horse in Ontario. So it's important to keep those
Hmm.
things in mind instead of us coming or any group, organization, or individual saying, nope, this is what it is. This is the template. You got to use it.
right,
That's it. No, you have to adapt it to every
Hmm.
scenario, to every audience. So thank you
Hmm.
for keeping that in mind. It sounds like when you created this.
Yeah.
totally. And we're also big live stream fans, Natalia. Like both Claire and I have been watching. We watched the Dr. Shane Bateman one. We're big fans.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
thank you.
true.
He's amazing. Yeah,
He
yeah,
really is.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dr. Bateman has been awesome. Actually, let's talk a little bit about that because our speakers are also attendees. Some speakers, yes, they do come
yeah,
to a conference just for their session because they're busy, they're working, especially if they're coming out of town or province or even country. But you're going to be there for the full 3 days of the conference, the
yeah,
pre conference learning labs sponsored by Edmonton Humane Society, and then the 2 days. So, from
Hmm.
an attendee perspective, remove yourself from the speaker, take off your speaker hat for a moment and put on your attendee hat. I want to know if there's any particular session, speaker, activity, anything that you're looking forward to the most in Montreal in April. How about you, Claire?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know what? It's such a hard question because it's like I'm so looking forward to all of it. And I think also sometimes when you go to the summit, you learn things that you don't expect. You attend a session that you didn't
totally.
necessarily expect to grab you. And I think that's like kind of the magic of it. And I'm a little bit biased, but honestly, I'm so excited about Allison Cuffley's session. I attended
Yeah,
their session last year at the summit, and it was just so like engaging and conversational. I really love the way they approach bringing people in, an engaging audience. It's really more of a conversation, and I think that's so special. So I know it's a biased answer because they will be speaking at the learning labs for promising practices, but I'm so excited for that.
Love it. How about you, Sue?
so many pieces. Claire also stole part of my answer because I love seeing Alison Cuffley speak. They're incredible. But also, so one, I'm excited to meet Dr. Shane Beatman. I'm gonna fangirl so hard. It's gonna be embarrassing. Um, but also, not to just promote the Promising Practices Learning Lab track, but I'm really excited because Mike Farley is coming to speak, and he is just such a giant in humane education, and just like such a kind, lovely human. And what I love about Summit as an attendee is you don't just get to enjoy the sessions, like you get to actually network with these people and ask them your questions and learn from them. And it's such a cool experience to be around these like heroes in animal welfare and like just grabbing coffee and enjoying the delicious food and like having great conversation. So that's the best part of Summit.
Hmm.
Ah, thank you. Okay, well, a couple things that came out of this. We have a fan club for Alison Coughley from the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada.
Yes.
Clearly, because we all love Alison. Yeah, and Alison has also been part of the program committee as well. So
Yes.
shout out
Yeah.
to you, Ali. We love you. And you just mentioned Matt Farley, and I want to say Matt, sorry, not Matt. I'm thinking of Matt
Oh,
Pepper, whom I just mentioned. Mike
totally.
Farley from
Yes.
University of Toronto Schools. Mike is a
Hmm.
teacher, and the reason
Yes.
why I'm saying this is because a lot of times people think like, oh, Summit for Animals Humane Canada. Well, it's not for me. I don't work at a humane society. I'm not a vet. Well, you don't have to. We have people like Mike, who is a teacher. He doesn't work at an animal shelter, but he is involved in humane education. His session is
Yeah.
called incorporating humane education into elementary, high school, and post secondary classes. We also have attendees coming from the human services sector. We have
Mhm.
Jill Morissette and Jesse Smith from Atira Development Society out in BC,
Mhm.
Yes,
and they are a
they're
women's
so
shelter, if
cool.
I'm not mistaken. Yeah, exactly. And I know Jessie has attended the conference for a couple of
Mhm.
years as an attendee, and this will be her first time speaking. So we attract a diverse audience cross-sectorally. So again, this is not just only if you're in a humane society, you're welcome. No, not at all. Policy making, animal welfare science. So please come in 2026, because remember, we're sold out now. So 2026, we'll see you. Okay, I've loved this chat, and I want to close off by talking about how humane education connects to violence prevention. So at the top of the conversation, Claire, you were explaining what the violence link is, but how is humane education related to this? What's the role?
Yeah, absolutely. So, humane education, just to kind of give an idea, if anyone's not familiar with what humane education is as a concept, it's basically a kind of character education, and it fosters pro social attitudes and behaviors. And so, this can not necessarily just apply to kids, but of course, as grown-ups, we're always learning and evolving, and this kind of education can totally apply to us too. And so it really works on fostering those behaviors like empathy, compassion, respect, responsibility, all those pro social behaviors can be strengthened in humane education. And yeah, so it kind of helps us improve our relationships, not only with animals, but of course, like with each other as people and even with ourselves, to help us learn how to be more compassionate with ourselves and more empathetic towards ourselves. And so, just for a little bit of context, I guess a good example of a humane education kind of lesson would be animal body language. So we talk about this one a lot in the project. Let's say you have a child and you're kind of teaching them about how to approach an animal and how to kind of figure out whether or not an animal, for example a dog or cat, wants to be pet. Of course, like that's going to be a method of bite prevention, like this is a safety lesson for that child to kind of learn like
Mm,
what the animal's body language is telling you. Do they want to be pet? Do they want to be approached? How are they feeling about that interaction? Yeah, of course that's going to be a safety lesson for the child, but it's also going to be really important and result in kind of a happier animal, and a healthier community. And so, really, at the same time, we're teaching, body language, but what we're teaching is boundaries and consent. And so those things are
mm,
so huge, of course, later in life when that child is going to grow up and be an adult. Those like lessons will absolutely stick with them. And so the idea is really that humane education can be used to interrupt or prevent patterns of violence, or patterns of development that can lead to violence, both against people and animals. So, yeah, it all kind of ties together, you'll find.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I would have never thought of humane education and consent, like it's just something that just clicked for me. Oh, right. Now that you explain it, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. It's a way to get into certain subjects, but not as directly, perhaps. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a
Totally.
secondary learning, equally important, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Of
exactly. And
course.
that's kind of the way we've been framing it too in the project, is that we're really using humane education as a vehicle to help prevent gender based violence. So we're talking about relationships with animals and we're talking about relationships between animals, but really, like, we're also talking about relationships between people. And so I think that's kind of the magic too, is like being able to have those conversations at the same time without necessarily saying it.
Thank you. Yeah. And once again, I just want to highlight here in the comments, or not in the comments, sorry, on the screen, the website for the Promising Practices project and how people can pre-register for some courses. So go to learning.humanecanada.ca and you'll find it there. There's a search function. You should be able to type promising practices and you'll get all of that information. Well, I can't believe we're right at the top of the hour. This has gone by very fast, very quick. We'll keep the recording. So if anybody wasn't able to join us live, no problem. That's why technology is amazing, because this will live on forever. So thank you. And even after the live stream, if you want to connect with Sue and Claire about the Promising Practices project, how can they connect with you? Is email the best? LinkedIn? What are your favorite platforms to connect with people?
I think email might be best for us, which is just sue@humanecanada.ca or claire@humanecanada.ca.
It's pretty easy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm going to type that here in the chat as well. So thank you for being so generous. And I know you always work with other sectors. Again, you don't work just with animal welfare. You're working with social services, you're working with pet food banks, etc. So I know you're always very eager to collaborate with others. So thank you as well for being so generous with your time and sharing information and resources. And I'm very excited to see you in Montreal in
Yay.
just a month. A month from today, we'll be on the very first official Thursday of Humane Canada Summit for Animals. I cannot wait. Thank you,
Thank
my lovely
you.
colleagues at Humane Canada, Sue and Claire. Thank you for your time. And thank you to everybody who watched live, or thank you if you're watching the replay. Thanks for staying with us until the end. Stay safe. Today's Friday, so have a great weekend. Take care,
Thank you for
everybody. Bye
having
bye.
us.
Thank you, Natalia, for
My
having us.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.